I'm Tracy Burns, and you're listening to Talk to Tea, a podcast for adorable weirdos, fringe dwellers, dare to be different, outliers and rebels, the innovators and creators of wild and brilliant ideas, also known as entrepreneurs. Join us for anecdotes and interviews full of love, laughter, and leadership with extraordinary people up to cool things in life. All right. Well, we're here today with an amazing guest, Jason Dombrow of Under the Clutter. And Jason, you're a professional organizer that actually takes an ontological approach to organizing.
That's right. Hi, thank you for having me, Tracy. It's nice to
You're
see
welcome. My pleasure. It's great to see you too. Great to be with you. So you've been organizing for over 16 years now.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. And I'm super excited we've been friends also, so I'll out us in terms of our relationship. And
oh
no, it's live, it's real. One of the things I love about you is just just that amazingly clear and, challenging in a super exciting way to think outside the box, essentially. And I've always related to you as someone that's like a total pioneer and a rebel and a badass. No matter what you're up to, you're just like an amazing individual to follow. So I'm super excited to have you on the podcast to share your brilliance with everybody. Yay.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure my mother would agree, but I'll take it.
I'll leave her out, although I know her and she's lovely too.
Yeah. She'd be like, a badass, a rebel. That's not my son. But it's true. It is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of try and, there's no one way to organize. There's no one right way to organize. I kind of, when I walk into a client's home, it's a very personal thing that they're allowing me to witness, how they live and where they keep stuff and all the stuff that they keep and how they operate. And when I look at it, it says something to me about how people think, about how people, maybe issues they're dealing with because of the way their space is organized. Sometimes I joke and I'm like the organizing whisperer, because it's like, like I walk into a room and I'll be like, this is not how it wants to be set up. There's a different way. And not that my way is better or best. It's like what is most functional for the space that you're living in, because in that context, your stuff says a lot about you and what you keep, what you hold on to, what you interact with. And to look at it from a contextual standpoint as to, hey, I want to walk into this room and feel relaxed or entertained or any number of thousands of things you can say. It takes something to look and to really be honest with yourself about what you want in a room. Sometimes I'll organize with a client and we'll have one thing in mind, and then something else will get uncovered because we're looking at all of their stuff. And they realize, oh, I really want a peaceful place rather than a happy place, and even that little shift will dictate, will dictate how you feel when you go into that space. And what we're going for is the reaction that you experience, that you want to evoke, and that even if you have guests over, that they evoke, that they experience. So, it's a little maybe to the left, but it's a great way to just look at what really serves you and where maybe you are stuck if you don't feel the freedom that you want, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a fascinating place to look, is that how the way we organize our world, or lack of organization, actually, and what I hear you say is reflecting or not reflecting the experience we're longing to have.
Yeah.
What is some of the most exciting work that you've done?
I love garages. Those are my favorite. I don't know why. I think it's because I used to do it when I was a kid. I used to organize my mom's garage all the time. But like, I don't know, just when like you get it right, like when it feels right, when the client says, oh my God, I didn't think this was possible, or wow, this really just was not even something that was on my radar. Um, those are the moments that I really treasure, that it really makes a difference for the client, because I know that this is going to make a lasting difference for them. I was working with this new couple recently here in LA, and yeah, I would say that they're in their late 20s, early 30s. Guy's a successful Emmy award-winning writer. I don't know if I even know what the wife does, but like we started this conversation, like you guys got married, and then there's like, your stuff, her stuff, and then our stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we don't take the time to really create what is ours. And we think that everything has to be ours, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is a pitfall, where you should have your own space and he should have his own space. And then there should be the our space,
Yeah.
and doing it like that sort of takes out the guilt, because there's no guilt in organizing. There's no, I should keep Aunt Sarah's lamp because it's been in the family for 40 years or whatever, like, sure, okay, if you want to, but like, but to really create the space is something that's a little radical.
Nice. I love that. I heard you touch on a couple of topics there that are like, some of the keys to relationship too. I heard there's his stuff, there's her stuff, or they and they's stuff, and then there's the our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how we are about our stuff.
Yes.
There's it's almost like our individuality is like, our identity is almost threatened when we can
Yeah.
be a breakdown in relationship right there, just walking into someone's garage, is what I'm hearing.
Sure. Yeah, and
Yeah.
just to be clear, I wasn't leaving out any genders or non-binary people. I was just using my couple as an example. So forgive me.
Yeah.
Please, include that. But yeah, it's when when you find that there's something to be created and you didn't know you could, or you didn't know you can say to your partner, I want this, or I hate that chair, or whatever it is, like the authenticity and the honesty to be able to express yourself, and then really look at what's going to serve the space rather than what's going to serve you per se. Because if
Hmm.
you serve the space, it will serve you.
Hmm.
There's no doubt about it. So like sometimes if you let go of that chair, which I happened to mention just a second ago, maybe there's a new chair that you love better, or maybe there's like, now you have room for a piano, or what, like whatever it is. It's just like our attachments to stuff really hold us back in some regards, because we don't think anything else is possible, or we don't think that anything else can go there, or you have to have it this way, or some book said I had to do it this way.
Yeah.
It's your house, your life. When you moved in, it didn't have any stuff in it. You put it where it is, and it created an environment that you're currently living in. And when you realize that you can switch it up, change it up, there's many people that kind of like to do it routinely, like quarterly or whatever, or even once a year, where they shift things around. It's great because the energy shifts, and you kind of like look at what's serving you in your life, and is this really serving you now? Is this serving the relationship? I don't mean to bring relationship, but there's a relationship with people, there's a relationship with your stuff, there's a relationship with the space. And when you really take a look and constantly reinvent, or pare down, or remove things, or let go of things, or buy things that really light you up, it just creates a totally different atmosphere.
Yeah. And there's one thing I pick up, or I was picking up. I was picking up what you were putting down there. Um, and really grabbed my listening, and that was we buy stuff and then we attach this meaning to it, or we're given stuff and we attach this meaning to it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, an inanimate object becomes this almost like this dominator. This is what I made up in my head as you were talking
Yeah.
of, it almost like this dictator of how we should be in the room or how the room is. And what I'm hearing is like a huge part of your work is opening people up to see that attachment, to see that meaning that they've given stuff, and to maybe work it out, let it go, and create a new relationship.
I'll be honest with you, and I don't say this very often, but sometimes I'll tell my clients, it's like sometimes people hire me just because they want permission to throw something out.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with that because I can tell you to throw it out. Um, but they don't realize when, let's say we do get rid of, like this young couple happened to have like 3 couches in their living room to kind of create like a box. And it was too many couches. And it was like, well, we were just saving this couch because we're renting out that space and the love seats there and they didn't want this one. And I said, yeah, but it's now invading your space, and your freedom to create in this atmosphere is now based on that you have to keep this because there's a set. And, maybe one day, I mean, to be honest with you, the couch looked a little raggedy. And it wasn't really like a great style, but did it function for a purpose? Sure. But they're so much more happy letting go of that couch and having the living room be an expression of them. And that's what, when you can really open someone's eyes to see something else, the freedom, or like to allow themselves to even be happy that their space is just the way they want it, is really just like the most rewarding thing.
Amazing. How would you say that you awaken people? Because that's kind of what I hear it like, to bring language to it. It's like, how do
Sure.
you awaken people to,
Um,
because it's clear to you, you've got that sort of supervision, like that altitude to be able to see it for what it is.
mhm.
How do you bring your clients into that?
It's funny. I always joke because when I grew up, my mom had a house cleaner, keeper or whatever. And, they'd come, I don't know, every other Thursday or whatever it was. And I would always remember her say, okay, you got to put stuff away. The cleaning lady's coming, which always made me kind of like, why am I cleaning for the cleaning lady? Like, but everybody does that. And
Yeah.
so I also tell my clients, look, it's not clean for the organizer time. I want to see how you do things so that I can get what there is for me to get to make a difference for you. I walked into this one woman's house. She was showing me around and she was like, oh yeah, and I have this, and this is my artwork, and this is, I don't know, Joan's stuff, and that's Bill's stuff, and all this stuff. And I said, and it just dawned on me at one moment, I'm like, did anyone ever like throw out your stuff? Because she kept hoarding people's stuff as if it was a problem to throw out. And she goes, no one's ever asked me that before, but when I think it was 8 or 9 years old, her mom threw all her stuff out in the garbage, and she had to climb in the garbage and get it.
Mm.
So she's living from that moment of, my mom's going to throw out my stuff. I have to keep it safe. And to be able to now I've worked with her a few times, and I'm like, well, send the stuff back. It's not yours. Why are you keeping it? They're not paying rent. They're not, it's like invading your space to be able to create. She's a photographer, a very good photographer. And she wants to do all these displays and artworks. What are they called? A showing, like a gallery showing. And
Yeah.
she has no room to really work, but she's keeping everybody else's stuff. And that's the kind of an example of, I don't necessarily know how to say how I make a difference other than when I see it, but I'm listening for where someone's stuck.
Mm.
I'm listening for, why do you think you don't have freedom or the ability to create, or that you can't have what you want? I mean, is probably the bottom line, um, and it's in those moments where she's like, wow, yeah, I really do that it makes a difference for them. When they, when I said to the young couple, you know, you need a space for hours. The wife was like, wow, we never really even thought of that. And
Mm,
it's like those, you know, being willing to deal with a client in a manner in which you have to be brutally honest and authentic for what's your truth. Um, that's sometimes not the easiest thing to do, but when you can do it in a way that opens them up or makes a difference for them, um, you know, there's nothing better. There really isn't, because it's like you're providing freedom from somebody. And I think that that's, you know, one of the greatest gifts.
yeah, love it. Yeah, so you're like, you're not, this is the thing I love and always have loved about the work that you do is that, sure, on the face you're shifting furniture, but what you're really doing is, you're shifting the lens through which they view their entire being, their person, their life, their experiences. And to
Absolutely.
bring that moment like that, what a brilliant moment for that woman to be able to like pinpoint at 8 or 9, you know, that moment then completely altering her actions and informing how she fills her space up. Like, who would have thought? It's an
For sure.
extraordinary conversation.
Yeah, and the trip is she's like in her late 50s, early 60s. So
Yeah.
could you imagine living that many years stuck in that? I'm afraid someone's going to throw my stuff out,
Yeah.
you know, and that's kind of like the absurdity. But yeah, like as you were saying, that really what it's like, it's giving permission to people to look at stuff in a different way, have them be okay with being empowered by their space, have them be okay with having what they want, and having the courage to either let go of something or to
Mm,
really engage with what they actually want to create or, you know, have in their home. You know, it's your home. When you moved in, there was nothing there. You created your home, as I said earlier. um, and when you let go of all the childhood things that you hold on to for years, you know, like, oh, it's going to be worth money someday, or I'm going to sell it someday, or all the what ifs and the how comes and some days, and maybe once I'll be famous or whatever, you know, whatever. I'm not, everyone has those things, but um, you know, it's like, what becomes more valuable, the idea that someday something's going to happen with it, or the space that you're able to use and function right now? And
nice.
it's now that, um, excuse me, it's now that really is what's important, because it's where you're living. You're not living in this fantasy of, you know,
Yeah.
one day I'm going to sell this or this, that, and the other thing. And maybe you will. And it's okay to store things. I'm not saying don't. I wouldn't recommend a storage unit, but that's another story. Um,
That's a whole other episode.
yeah. Um, but, you know, it's not wrong to, you could do anything. It's your stuff. I'm not here to tell you what to do with it, or I can't make you throw it out. I could only point out the cost. You know, there's an economic term called opportunity cost,
Mm,
where it's like the opportunity of having one thing over another. So you could either have the space or the idea you could have of something, you know,
mhm,
you could either have the space and it be functional, or you could have a space that's annoying the hell out of you because there's a chair that's broken and it's still there. And one day, you know, is your Uncle Jim's and he just died and you can't get rid of it. And all the stories that we make up in our head that it's literally just a chair. I
mhm.
get no one's going to steal the memories. And I think that's probably one of the most recurring kind of theme, is that people think that if they get rid of the chair, the memory of Jim, Uncle Jim or whatever, is going to die. And that's not true. So it's really, I mean, I know it didn't, you didn't call me up today to say, hey, let's have a talk about how people relate to their stuff, for the sake of people need to know that, you know, Jim's memories gonna die if you get rid of the chair. But here we are talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great point because I think, it is fascinating. Again, like those, it's almost like the ritual in the chair or the memory embedded in the chair versus it's actually just the memory itself.
Yeah,
But we attach, again, it's a demonstration of attaching something to this an inanimate object and making it responsible for that thing, rather
yeah,
than actually, you could just, you know, have that experience, remember Uncle Jim or, you know, whatever. But yeah, it's fascinating how we make up these stories and interpretations.
Well, we're human, and that's what the human brain does, is we need to have a meaning as to why something is. And when you let go, or you confront maybe, or challenge the
Mhm.
idea that that's true, you know, it's like the minute, I mean, just for the sake of argument, it's like if I say that I know you, it's now cutting off everything I don't know about you.
Mm.
There's no difference between the space and that concept, like objects in that concept, how I make it mean. If I say, you know, that chair is only Uncle Jim's, then it can't be Aunt Jones, or, well, I don't know, just making up stuff.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, or it can't be like, well, we're gonna get a new chair. You know, there's like I said earlier, there's no guilt in organizing. And when people assign that meaning to, well, you can't get rid of it because it's Uncle Jim's, that's not true. That's just what you're claiming. That's what you're attached to. That's what you're holding on to. Totally fine, totally valid. But you know, like I said, with the opportunity cost, is like, what is that space costing you? What is holding on to that object costing you? And
Mm.
it may be good, it may not, it may be bad. It's up to you, like, but for you to say. But like, if that space can be like, oh, you know, your child wants to have guitar, not guitar lessons, piano lessons or something, and you need to put a piano, whatever justification you use to get rid of that chair, you're going to use it because something else is possible. Something new is happening. It's when people get in a routine of, you know, like a groove, if you will, like,
Mhm.
you know, then it's just like there's a comfort and a settling into, and everything else is just not interesting because you are comfortable and confined into where you are. Again, nothing wrong and nothing invalid about that. It's just looking at, is this the best functionality for the space? Is this something I enjoy? And if not, what could I do about it? What else can I create? And it's looking from a creative space rather than, you know, there's nothing possible here, or I'm stuck with this because I have to keep Uncle Jim's chair.
Yeah, totally. I have a
I hope
question.
I didn't.
Oh,
Sure, I was just gonna say, I hope I didn't leave any loose ends, but I think I covered
no,
everything.
I love it. I love where you're looking. I think it's clear. And it's a fascinating world to dabble in because there's like so many questions I want to ask you about, you know, people and their stuff and mostly their stuff. Like when I'm looking at chairs and tables, I completely know that the stuff I'm fascinated about is, and I would imagine our listeners are fascinated about, is the story, the interpretation, the lens through which we're looking. And you sort of gave us a little carrot, a teaser of like that new space of possibility and what might lie there for someone in finally removing the whatever the block is, whether it's the chair, the table, or Uncle Joe's painting, right?
Yeah, and then just to be clear, it doesn't mean that there's a necessary block if you keep Uncle Jim's chair. It's just looking at the opportunity cost of keeping the chair versus having it be some other way. And that's
Yeah.
all, you know, it's like, you know, there are people that when they have an office, you know, some people just pile stuff up, and some people file things, and some people do it periodically. Like, you know, they have a routine about it. Like, oh, I do my shredding on Friday or whatever, you know, and I'm the kind of organizer that doesn't organize, you know, like say, hey, learn this method. Why
Mhm.
I said don't clean for the organizer earlier is because then I could see how you operate. And if I see that you're a piler, it may not be that you shouldn't make piles. It means that you should have a basket that you could throw the pile in.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and it's looking from the way you think and the space you have to work with that sort of meet
Yeah.
and create how functional or productive an office space is.
Yeah.
You know, and it could be some minor thing, like if you turn a desk around, or, you know, move a file cabinet or whatever, you know, it could create more space, better flow. And when that's happening, this is going to sound a little esoteric, but the room is happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like the room says, yes, this is it, you know, and, you know, like when you walk into a room, I always use this example. Let me say this. You know, you walk into a hotel,
Mm-hmm.
you'll know in about a half a second if it's a 5-star hotel or less. How do you know? Because when you walk into a 5-star hotel, it's got huge vaulted ceilings. There's a huge flower bed on a table in the middle of the foyer. Everything, you know, they don't have chocolate chip cookies on the
Mm-hmm.
counter. They have apples, you know, like there's just, they spend a lot of money to have that experience when you walk in, to feel luxurious, to feel tranquil, to feel at peace at home, you know, to have that experience. When you walk into a Best Western, no offense to Best Western, you're not going to have that experience. You're going to want to walk into a front desk. Why? Because they're selling hotel rooms. Let's say the Four Seasons, for example, they're selling an experience,
Mm.
and it's no different than walking into your home.
Yeah.
That's the kind of contextual thinking. Like, you
Yeah.
know, do you want to live in a 5-star hotel or do you want to live in a 2-star hotel? Both
Yeah.
valid, but just different outcomes.
Yeah. I love that. That is a, that really brings it home, that the notion of experience. And, you just triggered a thought in me in terms of, like, here we are in a time of pandemic where a lot of people have now been forced to actually create their home environment as their work environment. And I'm imagining, like, that's creating that experience. You're now potentially using this dining room or kitchen to serve multi-purposes and deliver perhaps two experiences. And maybe, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, maybe it's an opportunity to actually, how we sometimes compartmentalize our lives.
Mhm.
Like, I am this person over here at work, and I'm this person over here. And I actually assert that that creates dissonance and potentially, like, emotional cost. There's a cost to that separation. What are your thoughts on that? Like, this pandemic actually offering an opportunity for us to bring our whole self to everything that we do, to be more authentically expressed. It's kind of an idea I've been hanging out with. What are your thoughts?
I think without question, you know, just to take a step back, I think this pandemic has really, before someone said, oh, I have to figure out where I'm going to work, there was the, oh my God, look at this house. There's like all this stuff, or I've never gotten, you know, I didn't see that before. You know, people are dealing with their living environment because they now, or have been, you know, more forced to be at home and really confront what they leave when they go to work. And yeah, sure, you can have dual purposes in a room. I always say it shouldn't be more than two. Um, but they should also be defined spaces, you know, like I'm working with this woman currently, and she needs to have a workout room and a guest room in the same space. Doable, doesn't seem like it should be doable. It just has to be bedroom on one side, workout room on the other. I mean, the space happens to be long enough where it will work, but it's defining that experience. So if someone comes in and says, oh, this is my guest room, you can stay here, you know, there's still a little counter for them to put their change on. There's still a closet for them to put it, you know what I mean? To put their clothes in or whatever. And then there's the workout side, and maybe there's a rack for towels, and, you know, a place to put their water bottle, or any number of things. But to, you know, this pandemic has really had people confront what's actually there.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'm sure there are people that are working on their couch in their living room off the coffee table. Um, not, there's nothing wrong with any way you want to do it. It's that you now see something you didn't see before, and you have to confront something, and we're all confronting something that we haven't confronted before, um, by, you know, working from home, or creating an office at home that maybe we didn't have anymore. that's kind of a perfect example to say, well, Uncle Jim's chair shouldn't be there. I need an office, so I have to put a table, you know, and
Yeah,
that's the kind of things to confront. And I think the
I
pandemic is
love it.
having us confront that.
Yeah. And it's really difficult to talk about any one thing that confronts us because it's unique to each of us. And I imagine like your clients are no different. And that's the thing that you're so gifted and brilliant at listening for.
Thank you. Yeah. It's like, it's also people are dealing with themselves. And
Yeah.
it's not to say that a couple has the same thoughts and ideas or interests or styles or anything. And so it could lead to arguments. I'm not, organizing is not always happy-go-lucky. In fact, my first client, we organized his, hers, and our stuff, and he realized he wanted to get divorced. And I was like, living with the guilt for that for a couple of months, because I'm like, oops, that wasn't my intent. I was supposed to bring happiness, but it brought authenticity. And
Yeah.
I think that's really where organizing through a context, or organizing with an experience or a theme, or however you want to say it, um, really takes the right and wrong out of it, takes the morality out of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Amazing. And there's such a, what I hear too is like an opening for vulnerability. I could imagine, like, sure, yeah, one incident with a particular engagement resulted in a reality. Hey, I would actually like a divorce. It's not about separating our stuff or any of that. It's actually this. I mean, what a raw and vulnerable moment to actually find yourself in. And I would imagine, there are those moments where that level of intimacy and vulnerability are brought about in clients that, don't necessarily end like that, but actually there's opportunity for even deeper intimacy, for,
Sure.
speaking truth and a deepening of the relationship as a result of that.
Sure. It's funny because sometimes I get calls from like a mother's son or the wife, um, or some, combination of, it's not the person who really wants the organize, or needs the organizing, I should say.
Mm,
You have to be ready. You have to be ready to let go. You have to be ready to confront the truth. You have to be ready to really look at how you've lived. And it may be depressing, it may be upsetting, it may be anger invoking.
mhm,
There's so many emotions that people deal with in relation to their stuff that they don't even realize it. you
mhm.
know if you walked if you had a bad day at work and you walk into a house that's cluttered, for instance, it's just going to perpetuate the, oh God, why is this still here? Oh, da, 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 da. And then the anger continues throughout the day. And then, you wonder why you're stressed or upset, or, because you have no room to breathe. There's no room for you to decompress. And I think that's the most important thing, is to have your own sacred space, whether it's the bathroom. I'm just like, you take a shower
Yeah,
and that's your sanctuary. Fine. you know um but people, this pandemic has really tested people's relationships, tested people's experiences in their homes, how they operate. I mean, everything's different. How things operate from now on are not that. you know
yeah,
so people are being forced to deal with it, and some like it, some don't like it, some need help, some don't want help. Like, there's a multitude of outcomes and responses, but you know you have to be willing. And if you're not willing, then I won't work. Like, if it's a client of mine, I won't work with you, because you have to be willing. If you're
yeah,
not willing, I mean, everything starts with being willing. you know Whether you let go or not, whether you buy something new or not, until you are willing, you're not going to look.
yeah,
And if you're not looking, then it's not going to make a difference. It's just going to be an annoyance for you.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that is like what I hear too is that willingness, the steps to get to willing can sometimes be those like first courageous steps. That willingness to be vulnerable requires being willing, right? And to be, willing, you got to be vulnerable to
Mhm.
take those initial steps. And I imagine people calling you like for the first time, they've probably walked themselves down that path a little. And then at that point of dial, they're like, all right, this is an indication of willingness. And
Sure.
I imagine too, like willing getting you there. But then I imagine these hilarious moments for you, sometimes like hanging on to the end of something and you and your client doing this like back and forth tug of war between the thing they won't let go of, right? It's like, but walking with them, and you have such an amazing sense of humor, Jason. I know that that humor certainly lends itself to this kind of work.
Sure.
And yeah, anything else that your special, like your secret sauce to having people part with that thing that they're so confronted to let go of, or that you bring?
Well, I will say, first of all, I don't play tug of war with my clients.
Okay, just an imaginary story.
The only person I play tug of war with is my dog.
Might be a good sitcom.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
table that for another conversation.
For sure. But I think one of the things I always kind of try and tell people is you're not stuck. I'm not here to force you to do anything. You don't have to do anything. But if you want some freedom, if you want to experience some happiness, if you want to, have time to decompress or whatever that might be for you, then look at your space, because most likely there's something there telling you, hey, buddy, hey, lady, whatever, I'm over here. Can you either get rid of me or fix me up, or make this more you, or use me, or whatever. Like a lot of people don't use stuff. It's like things are meant to be used, and if you're not using it, maybe that's the sign of let it go.
Nice. I love that. Sounds like something great for all of us to apply, almost like on a regular basis,
Yeah. I'll say one more thing. I have this motto that I use, and now that we've had all this talk, it may make a little more sense than when I start out with it. But my company motto is, you don't need it, you never have, and you never will. And if you really own that, if you really like absorb that, then you can create, then you could have fun, then you could have the experience that you're looking for. But if you don't really understand that you don't need it, then there's the attachment still there, the resistance still there, and you're just going to be stuck with what you want, or what you have rather. So if you want something else, then you have to be willing to let go of that, and know that you can create anything else that you were looking for, whatever experience you want to have when you walk into your house.
A profound moment. I love that motto. And in honor of that motto, I think that's a great place for us to put a full stop on this conversation, and perhaps a little teaser of maybe more to come on that. Jason, thank you so much for being here on our podcast and enlightening us in the world of organizing, which is so much more multifaceted than we ever really give it credit for. So, Jason, thank you.
Thank you.
From British Columbia to California. I adore you, you weirdo.
I love you too.
The one thing that we both are great at is being mutually adorable weirdos, rebels, and pioneers. So I just really thank you a lot for everything that you've always been for me, and now for our audience. And great
Awesome.
job for all your clients.
Yeah, and just to plug it in there, because that's what people do these days. If you want to
please do
follow us on Facebook at Under the Clutter, please do, or on Twitter or Instagram.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We'll actually put a link to that in our podcast episode, so audiences will be able to find you wherever you are. So
sounds great.
Magic. Thanks again. I adore you. And I'm sure we'll hear more from you in future episodes. Hey?
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy.
I'm Tracy Burns, and you've been listening to Talk to T, entrepreneurs riffing on all things love and being. If you enjoyed this episode, please join us next time. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. Until then, remember, let love lead and always leave room for a little magic in your life.